is still here, or if he left. I think he's still here. He's coming. Okay. He did. I guess now I mean, if anybody would like to speak their mind, say their piece as far as city staff goes, Mr. Cook, you're a city engineer. I think everybody knows that. Everybody gets it. So.
Yeah, and I guess that's where, just to, like we were just saying, just summarize it, you know, they both had different elements in their proposals. I admittedly was the one that ended up asking to have all three of Brunton's proposals included, just so you could see that that original proposal wasn't trying to shaft the city. It wasn't trying to have some extremely high numbers. And when you see that that revised one is still what essentially was their recommended cost-effective initial solution, and it still was, and that's why that was in there. But we understand now, you know, that that was made before council had that opportunity to share their opinion on what they wanted. And so that one more or less, you know, being removed, you know, does more or less make them both in the ballpark of a $2.5 million construction estimate. They both have the fast track multiple bid package construction manager process to be able to try and make the timeline. They're both within about a month of completion date with that process, with wood or steel. And then I guess once Woodseth did add their construction not to exceed number, you know, we're looking at fees that are within about 30 grand of each other. And so then it really does come down to the product that's being delivered and how it's delivered and what actually is included in that estimated ballpark $2.5 million building, and whether or not it ends up coming in under and you get more for the money or not. You know, that's where the design firm, you know, techniques and company, you know, and quality come into play. And that's just where, with Brunton, my firm and myself work with them, and that's, you know, admittedly, you know, we have that history. I trust their recommendations. I know they'll work with me to deliver, you know, the best product for the city. And I just haven't worked with Woodseth, so, you know, that's where that has come from. That's why Brunton was brought in originally, and that's, I guess, where we sit, so.
Do we need a resolution or an acceptance of either one of these proposals right now, Ms. Wood?
So Mayor, what I have done is I included a resolution, so if there is a motion, a second, and a vote to choose an architect this evening, we do have that ready, but I just need to fill the blank with who you choose. If you're not at that point and you need anything revised, it would go to the next meeting.
I don't think we want to delay this any longer. I mean,
I
let's
agree.
get started. I motion we hire Woodseth.
I have a motion from Councilman Lundin that we hire Winseth. Hopefully I'm saying that right, in a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, state your name and say aye.
Dan Collison, aye.
Steve Lundin, aye.
And myself, aye. Therefore, the acceptance of Winseth's proposals 4-0 and passes.
I do want to thank everyone for coming, Woodseth, and also Corey and your team there. Thank you so much for attending via Zoom. While you're on vacation, we hadn't asked you to come before, so being gracious to attend tonight while you were away, we greatly appreciate it.
Indeed. Thank you very much,
thank you.
gentlemen.
Good luck on your project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it Mike?
Mike, you're still here? You should be already starting this project.
Mike, don't let me down.
Absolutely, come up. Hopefully a few words here, because we got to keep moving.
First of all, thank you, but I just wanted to request whoever would like to be heading up this committee or whoever I will be working with.
It's gonna be Jason Cook and the liquor store manager.
Okay, so I did go to your establishment earlier
And
today.
you're gonna need the money, guys, so you might as well take Mr. Becker with you too.
I'm not chopped liver.
And Miss
Okay,
Wood,
and-
she
yeah.
pretty much runs the city, so
And
you might as well-
you may not want my opinion on that.
No, you don't want his.
So, yeah, I'll be reaching out to, you should be my point of contact to reach out to, drop the contract.
It'd be Josie
It'd be
Wood.
Josie.
And, so, yeah,
And-
certainly look forward to meeting with you very soon.
And Mike, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, all right.
Any of us at that matter.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
You bet.
All right, let's move on to, what number are we on? K5, ordinance, amending chapter 227, the parking and storage. Ms. Wood?
All right, Mayor and Council, this was discussed at Committee of the Whole to revise, or actually it was a repeal and replacement of Chapter 227 in City Code because there were so many modifications and revisions, particularly because of all the definitions were to now meeting state statute. The other things that we did with this chapter was we removed the table that was an exhibit at the end, and we put those into text. And then we included the language which was recommended and requested at Committee of the Whole, and I'll read it. Non-motorized trailers used to haul snowmobiles, ATVs, or other recreational units, including the units or fish houses, are permitted on all surfaces if placed a maximum of 10 feet from the driveway during the time frame from November 1st to March 31st only. The total GVWR is not to exceed 10,000 pounds. Otherwise, this is exactly how it was presented at Committee of the Whole.
Councilman Gordon, that was kind of your item. Are you
Yeah.
sufficient with
I
that?
think it sounds great. Yeah, I think that's, solves a lot of issues with storage in the wintertime for those vehicles, so.
And then I would lean on Chief Myers. Does that sound like it's some legs for you to stand on, Chief?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
I have a motion to accept by Councilman Lundin and a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, state your name and say aye.
Dan Collison, aye.
Steve Lundin, aye.
Jimmy Gordon, aye.
And myself, aye. I don't need to say if anybody's opposed because that's all four of us, and that passes 4-0. Moving on to K6, the Heritage East Dual Intersection Control Update and Discussion.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So this has been discussed here within our city council, our committee, also at the county board level. As you know, I gave an update at the last meeting that said that there was interest and recommendation from the county board that we maybe reach back out to Minco because they didn't think that the whole Minco board was on board with not selling the land and maybe selling it, and there's maybe some disconnect. So I had reached out to Doug Helberg, and Peggy got back in touch with me, and she had stated that Minco would be seeking $8 per square foot for the right-of-way that we would need to put this road in to make it a four-way intersection. So you can see the image before you shows how that would no longer be a three-way intersection, but it'd be a four-way, which was one of the options presented within that intersection control study. That's quite a bit of right-of-way, as you can see. I did ask if Minco would be requesting that we purchase the whole parcel or just the part that we need for the road, because you can see to the west there, the rest of that may be unusable. Didn't know if they'd want us to purchase that. I sent that email off on December 21st. I have not heard back on that one. But with the cost at $8 per square foot, that would roughly be about $160,000 for that acquisition of that. That is not including any curb, gutter, pavement, storm, site work that would need to be done. So staff is looking for direction. Do you want me to explore this further as this being an option? We don't have anything set aside for this. We have not been told from the county what portion of the project would be ours versus theirs, if we're gonna share it a third, similar to what we did with the study cost. But this would come basically out of general fund money. So looking at it would impact potentially taxes to get the funds to do this, depending on the timeline. I haven't heard anything from the county. Perhaps you may know an update, Commissioner?
No, we're waiting to hear what, if we're gonna have a fourth leg or not.
Okay.
It's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
That area's a disaster, though.
Yeah, but a three-way stoplight, it sure is. Sure it is. It's gonna do more than what a roundabout's gonna do, because a roundabout's gonna slow traffic down. It's not gonna regulate and stop it like a stoplight would.
I still think a roundabout's gonna move, you never stop with a roundabout, it's always a right-hand turn out of there. I mean, I don't wanna spend the money on any of it, but
I definitely don't wanna spend money on a roundabout, because you just said it, it's not gonna stop anything. And that's these businesses that are on the side, yours included, would be hard to get out of there on a roundabout.
that's what I'm saying though, is it doesn't stop anything, which is a good thing, but you can still get off of it. It's continuous, you know what I mean?
I just sent Mayor Johnson a text message the other day about he actually used to be on city council.
Yeah.
Jeff Cole. He was looking for a body shop over in Sauk Center. And somebody said, why? He says, I got smacked into in a roundabout.
I mean, I agree with you
It's
though. I mean,
because
I think,
there's people are gonna be confused with it.
No, I
And
think
we do have older drivers in this community.
Yeah.
And it's going to confuse them.
I've got so many businesses that have reached out to me, Councilman Gordon, on
no,
County Road 5.
I don't disagree. I mean, I'm just saying my personal opinion. I'm not saying I'm gonna vote
Right,
for a
I'm
roundabout.
just, and I'm just
in my
letting you know
personal
that,
opinion, a roundabout, and like you said, I have a business right there. To me, getting in and out there is gonna be easier with the roundabout than it is with the stoplight. I mean, think about how far back those semis or other vehicles just trying to get on a quick trip alone are gonna have to sit at that stoplight. You know, I mean, it's just,
they're gonna sit there in a roundabout.
why?
I see it all day.
constantly
I
a
drive
right-hand
these
turn.
roads all day.
It's always a right-hand turn. You can get out of there to the right. Jason's laughing too, but it's always a right-hand turn. You can almost always take a right-hand turn out of that spot.
And nobody's courteous enough, they'll just keep coming, and the semi will never get out.
I sat at one Monday.
I
I
sat
sat
at
at one for probably 10 minutes.
At a roundabout?
Yep.
I'd say,
Because as soon as they see cars in that roundabout, they speed up because they don't want to stop for you.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not kidding you.
yeah.
I'd say 5 or 6 minutes I've sat.
I think more people want the stoplight, so I would have to go toward the stoplight.
It's just, I'm worried about our businesses. And if our
I don't-
businesses are reaching out the way they are, at the caliber they are, and they're saying, you're not stopping anything, you're not controlling anything with the roundabout.
I'm worried we're gonna stop too much is my concern,
The
but
three-way stoplight's not gonna do anything at all, except make it worse. The four-way will help, but not a three-way.
Wow, you come up with $160,000, Mr. Merrill, and then we'll talk about the four-way stoplight, all right?
Say, if I can just chime in just a little bit. So there's kind of two parts to consider here. So that study that was done, when it was the four-legged intersection, then those traffic levels of service were significantly better, you know. Even
With a
though there's-
stoplight.
With the stoplight versus that double roundabout thing, in the end, they were both very comparable. So rerouting this by that study would give very similar results. Other things to consider on this cost is whether or not the county would be involved at all. Granted, usually city right-of-way would not probably end up with county involvement, but if this was part of the overall project, you know, whether there's a cost share on the road reroute through there, and all those things. So there's a lot of other elements that are related to how much the actual cost to the city would end up being. Another piece that actually would still need to get looked into is the max that the city could actually agree to pay per square foot. There's kind of some rules about the maximum over like market value that a city can pay. Otherwise, you're kind of getting into legal issues there. So even though the bank came up with $8 a square foot, we'd probably have to look into whether that's even something that is allowed to be paid. And as Josie mentioned, the property on the west side between the road and that pond is basically unbuildable and unusable once that road went in. And so, you know, whatever is gonna have to get addressed with that, and a very good question to have asked the bank what they were thinking. If they were thinking that was gonna get purchased as well, that would be another significant different number as well, or area.
Yep.
So I guess what we would have to do, how can we give you an answer when there's still more questions that need to be answered?
I guess we have to wait for it.
I mean, we'd have to wait to see what the county's gonna
she
say.
just
is-
wants some direction on it.
Yeah, I'm just looking, do you want me to explore this further of what a total cost would be? I mean,
Yep.
I'll
Well,
definitely,
yeah,
if you want me to
absolutely.
keep Okay, so to put the road in to see, okay, that's all I'm
See if the
looking for
county's gonna
before I
jump
do
on
extra-
board, see if that's, the $8 is even feasible, answer all the unknowns.
You need that on a motion?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, moving on to K7, ordinance, amending ordinance number 199, adopted on February 4th, 1997, entitled Regulating the Operation of Snowmobiles Within the City. Chief Myers.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, we discussed this back on November 17th, that the way we had our ordinance, you couldn't operate on the roadway, public or private property, so you couldn't operate snowmobiles within the city was the actual way the ordinance was wrote. So at the direction of council, the biggest change is we added the use that they can be operated for direct route to and from granted state trails and operated on the roadway itself. That'd be city streets, we wouldn't have the authority to allow snowmobiles to operate on county state aid highways because that'd be against state law.
I think this is very, very similar, if not the same as many other cities' ordinances.
Have you weighed it against any other cities, Chief?
Yeah, it's very similar, and even the other language that we didn't change is very similar. The speeds, the curfew per se is on there. Yeah, they're almost all identical. I did reach out, discussed at the committee meeting, I reached out to the Cambridge Snowdrifters, I think that's the local club, and they encouraged the city to allow people to operate their snowmobiles from the city to their state grant and aid trail system, because under the last ordinance, but the ordinance is written, they weren't allowed to actually operate from the road or from their house to the snow trail system. It doesn't mean that piece of putting in to and from the trail system makes it so the city of Isani isn't a recreational snowmobile endeavor. So we don't want snowmobiles recreating through the city streets, because that's not what our city streets are made for. It's for the recreation, but allows for those people to go to the gas station, to go up and go on and get on the trails. So we're giving those allowances.
Any conversation by the council? Any questions, comments, concerns?
Make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
Motion to accept by Councilman Lundin and a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, state your name and say aye.
I actually had a question real quick.
Go ahead, Councilman Collison.
Did I hear correctly, Chief, about a curfew?
That was in the ordinance. It's something that wasn't discussed at the cow, and it's still in there. So that was the one that was still from 1997. So between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., except for emergency purpose or when returning to the operator's residence from most direct route lawfully permitted. So if you're coming from a trail or from a trail, you can't be going to a trail. You can be coming from a trail to your residence during that curfew time.
During 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., did you
No,
say?
11 p.m. to 6 a.m.
You said 6 at first.
Sorry. So 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. was the curfew that was in there.
Okay. I guess I don't agree with that part of it, but I guess I don't see a reason why we would put a time limit on it, because we don't do that with any other.
It's a noise ordinance, Councilman Collison. And we do have a noise ordinance within the city of Isani.
Right, but a snowmobile can be no louder than a Harley. Actually, they're quieter than a Harley or a pipe motorcycle, and there's no curfew on them.
Can I rescind my, my second? Because I think, I agree with Dan on that. I mean, if we have a noise ordinance, then they can enforce that, but
Which is 11 p.m.
well, but what Dan's saying is that the snowmobiles aren't necessarily gonna violate the noise ordinance. They might, but in that case, then we can enforce it, but I don't see any reason to restrict that either.
Especially depending on your work hours sometimes. Yeah.
Sure.
You're out and you're not getting back till after midnight if you're going on a long ride. So,
And it allows for that.
It allows for that, Councilman Collison, according to the chief.
I just, I guess anybody that was riding snowmobiles couldn't leave their house to get on the trail that's open 24/7 after 11 PM?
You can return to your house, it says, it says when returning to operator's residence.
So you couldn't leave at 11 o'clock at night to go to a trail.
Right.
Why would you be riding that late anyway, I guess would be my
Well,
question.
what if,
A lot of people ride at night because it's, for one, it's, a lot of times it's safer. You can see oncoming traffic and sleds a lot easier with the lights. And a lot of times, they'll like to get out there right after the groomer, which is late at night.
And I am one that if I heard you screaming through my neighborhood at 11 o'clock at night, you bet you I'm gonna be calling the police. So they'll be enforcing a noise ordinance or a curfew, so either one.
For me, it's no different than, say, a neighbor with a Harley that, takes off to go to work at 4:35 in the morning.
You got one at the end of the block and he gets called on probably 3 times a year. So I would be one of these that would definitely, and I live across the street from 55 plus housing, that all they do is do nothing but call the police, so I guess I'm kind of looking out for myself and them. So I guess either way, it's going to be followed by a noise ordinance or a curfew. I mean, other cities are doing the same thing. People are pretty much respectful to it. I mean, if you want to go rip-roaring down the trails of Highway 65, then so be it, but you're coming
There's a
home.
big difference between a curfew and a noise ordinance.
I see his point.
I do.
I see his point. I'll rescind my motion. I'll motion that we rescind the curfew. And if it's gonna be that loud, they're gonna get nailed for noise. I mean, it's, I make a motion to rescind the curfew and remove it and just go to the noise. If it's gonna be noise and they fail noise, that's it.
So I have an ordinance to pass it minus the curfew.
Right, so to state, it's a motion to approve with the omission of 2270-4B. We would strike out all of B.
Correct.
Can we make sure we look, because we already looked at this during the committee of a whole, and now, is there any other changes? Because the only changes we talked about before that the council had concerns with was allowing them, so I just want to make sure that there's nothing else.
I do recall that you did say that the first time and nobody had a problem with it, but all of a sudden now
I
they
don't
do,
remember the
so
curfew,
I
so-
remember it clear as day.
I have a question on lights. Are lights required? Stop, brake lights?
Yeah, I mean, that's state statute, that's not under our regular, I mean, we can force it, but we don't
Paying
need to write it.
attention.
I saw somebody riding a wheelchair the other night, and I didn't even see him.
You can always remove
That's
it,
different.
Put it back in if it's a big problem.
Yeah, but that's what he's trying to avoid. I get what the chief's saying.
I'll second Steve's motion there.
So I have a motion from Councilman Lundin to accept this minus, we're striking the B part out, the curfew, and a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, state your name and say aye.
Dan Collison, aye.
Steve Lundin, aye.
Jimmy Gordon, aye.
I'll oppose same sign, which would be myself. I will say nay. So it passes 3-1. Moving on to K8, ordinance amending the city zoning code, ordinance 445, section 16, signs. Ms. Selman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The item before you tonight is to amend the side code to set perimeters for freestanding signs in the Highway 65 overlay district. This amendment only applies to the overlay district on Highway 65. This item was before the Planning Commission on December 15th. The Planning Commission recommended approval with a 3-2 vote. The amendment is to add a base a base around the freestanding sign that we discussed at Planning Commission, and now it's before you at council.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilman Lundin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Collison. All in favor, state your name and say aye.
Dan Collison, aye.
Steve Lundin, aye.
And myself, aye. Opposed, same sign.
Jimmy Gordon, aye.
Motion carries 3-1. K9, ordinance amending the city zoning code, ordinance 445, section 6, residential district.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, the R3A district allows public buildings as a conditional use. According to that definition, fire stations are public building or use. Part of our transaction with selling the fire station is to add fire station as a permitted use in the district. That's what this ordinance does.
Make a motion to approve.
Second it.
Motion to approve by Councilman Lundin and a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, state your name and say aye.
Dan Collison, aye.
Steve Lundin, aye.
Jimmy Gordon, aye.
And myself, aye. I don't have to do any nays, because that's all four of us, 4-0. Thanks, Ms. Selman. Do I have a approval of the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
I have approval for the consent agenda by Councilman Lundin and a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, state your name and say aye.
Dan Collison, aye.
Steve Lundin, aye.
Jimmy Gordon, aye.
And myself, aye. No need to do nays, because that's all four of us, 4-0.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Lundin and a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, state your name and say aye.
Dan Collison, aye.
Steve Lundin, aye.
Jimmy Gordon, aye.
And myself, aye. That's 4-0, therefore we stand adjourned.
I gotta-